You are listening to the
World Extreme.
World Extreme Medicine.
The World Extreme Medicine
Podcast.
We are here today to discuss Survival RX, Thriving Alone in the Wild with Dr. Teimojin Tan. Dr. Tan is a seasoned physician and expert in wilderness survival. He gained widespread acclaim as a participant in season 9 of the popular reality TV show Alone. And he has this unique blend of medical expertise and deep wilderness knowledge. And Dr. Tan showcased exceptional skills in navigating the harsh and unforgiving environment of Labrador, Canada, alone. His innovative strategies and resilience under extreme conditions led many fans and fellow competitors to believe that he was the most deserving of the season's top honor, which is the should-be winner. And outside of the show, Dr. Tan is known for his dedication to educating others on survival medicine and his passion for exploring the intersections between health and the natural world. And his journey on Alone not only highlighted his formidable survival abilities, but also underscored his commitment to self-reliance and adaptability in the face of nature's greatest challenges. And so, Dr. Tan, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me. What an introduction. Blushing.
I did my homework. And I've actually it's before I was asked to do this interview, I've been a big fan of yours, and I've followed you on Instagram with great interest. And I admire everything that you're doing. And what inspired you to participate in season 9 of Alone? Like what was your primary goal going into that competition?
It's interesting because the goals throughout the season, it's such a huge experience to undertake. And it was funny because the reason to go to the show was completely different than the reasons to stay in the show, which I found really interesting in retrospect. But as someone who's really interested in outdoor survival, solo trekking, and all that good stuff, and emergency medicine and full spectrum medicine, it was kind of a combination of everything that I've learned to that point. And it was kind of like a test for me to see if I could apply everything that I've learned as a physician, everything that I've learned as a soldier, everything that I've learned as a survivalist and working with indigenous populations across the world, and to help represent that as a knowledge base that helps prepare people for just any possible situation. Because even if you are a physician, even if you have these capabilities and this knowledge, when you get thrown in that true survival situation, there is such a huge reliance on your basic survival skills, and your ability to do that and make that scene safe for your whole team, including your patients, is pivotal.
Absolutely. And so did you train for this? Like, how did you prepare physically and mentally for these challenges? And like, it's one thing to sort of survive in the wilderness as a team where everyone brings their skill set to the table and you work together. It's quite another thing to be alone for an extended period. So how did you prepare?
Yeah, absolutely. So for people who are tuning in who have never heard of the show Alone, the whole premise is it's majority, like 90%, all self-filmed. You have like 4 cameras and you have 10 items that you choose from a list, and that's basically what you get. And you have to survive as long as possible for the chance to win a big prize money. Now, the preparation, I feel like as the season has progressed, we're at a point in the Alone franchise where every single contestant has decades under their belt for training. So it's not something that you just do a weekend course or a bushcrafting course or survival course and just do. I was up against people who had 20 years plus of hunting experience, commercial fishermen, survival instructors, primitive living enthusiasts. And for me, it kind of started with just a need to be outdoors. And I attribute that often to my godfather, who's French Canadian, who grew up from a line of like frontiersmen and people who love being outdoors. And he did the biggest service to me and just instilled that curiosity and instilled that desire just to be out there. And through that, I did a lot of solo traveling in my youth, going to a lot of developing countries. And my kind of area of gravitation was mostly indigenous peoples because of their rich heritage, their rich cultures. And what I found myself really passionate about is ethnobotany and looking at the medicinal side of verbal and sometimes written knowledge in regards to health and health maintenance. So as I dabbled throughout all these different things, I then joined the military, and that gives you a definitely a different sense of pace, a different sense of intensity, and also a different skill set and mindset as well. So I think that combination between walking with indigenous people and learning that it's almost like a calm approach to things, and then going the complete opposite with the military, get it done fast, get it done hard, and aggression, aggression, aggression. Um, and somewhere along the middle, especially as a physician, was an interesting middle ground. And I think the combination of all that um, definitely attributed to a lot of my successes out there, but also helped me with a lot of the failures out there as well. Because when you go out there with a plan, typically that changes very quickly. And no matter how good you are, if you haven't experienced extreme starvation, it is like a whole different game completely.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. And you mentioned your godfather. Are there any
Mhm.
other mentors that you attribute this skill set and this love of the outdoors?
Mhm. I think a lot of it had to do with all the encounters that I had in like East Africa and South America, and there was just such a resonance between a person, their community, individuals, and nature, and it's something that you feel to your core. You know, like when you go to a place like that, and as like a young person, a student, you literally have zero responsibility, so you can experience that to the fullest extent, and you're just living there and feeling life in that through that lens was definitely life changing. And I would say that it's something that you don't forget, something that even if you're working a 9 to 5 in an ER where you don't see sunlight for several days, it's something that you yearn for, and it's something that I think a lot of people need or should want. And I think it's a combination of all those experiences and all those encounters with different wonderful people and communities that allowed me to kind of put my foot down and say like this is the path that I want to pursue as a professional.
I frequently prescribe people 30 minutes of outdoor activity. It just
Absolutely.
it just is. I go crazy when I'm inside too much. A lot of what ails us both mentally and physically, I think, could be ameliorated by some more time outside
Absolutely.
and by engaging with some of these people.
Hmm.
And so, can you share some of the most challenging and rewarding moments you experienced on the show?
Mm. Sure. So I think the biggest challenge that I could think of in the early days was as someone coming into the show, I think pretty much everyone had hunting experience. And I think I was one, maybe one out of two who had never hunted before. You know, I shot recurve bow for almost 7 years, but I've never hunted with it. And that was a big thing because you know your arrowheads are different weights, different projectiles, different trajectories, and with animal behaviors, like some animals have completely different behavior patterns, and that contributes very largely in your success as a hunter out there. So my plan was to really focus on fishing, and you get there and you get told what the hunting and fishing regulations are. And unfortunately, my season, you can't put out trot lines, you can't put out nets, and you can't even fish normally. It's only fly fishing. So I got there. I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm just gonna be fly fishing. Okay, let's give it a go." And the first 3 days were fantastic. You know, I was throwing in flies and getting strikes almost every single time. I caught about like four small, medium-sized fish, and that gave me a lot of confidence. And then the temperature changed like on a dime. It got cold really fast. The water levels dropped about a foot, foot and a half. And from that initial spots that I was getting a lot of success, there were zero bites from day 4 onwards. And for 2 weeks, I had zero animal protein and no idea how I would survive longer than those initial days. So I had to switch very, very abruptly to hunting. And I did bring my bow because I knew that I was accurate with it. I just didn't know how to hunt with it. And I think that was the first kind of change, especially as someone who hasn't really taken a whole lot of life. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers out there, even if you eat meat, it's different than getting it yourself, killing it yourself, watching that critter struggle, and watching the life leave its eyes, you know? And that was a big challenge for me, not only because I have never done it before, but for that psychological relationship. But I feel like the transition happened when you were just so hungry that even though you needed to take a life to sustain yours, the gratitude in that moment was just like something that I've never experienced in my life. You know, like we can always be grateful for food and our resources, but I think once you're at that point of starvation, when you're literally kind of at the breaking point, mentally, physically, emotionally, and then you get that relief, it is just something that's such a huge blessing. And that was kind of like the first big challenge. And there are multiple different points along that journey that made it uh, challenging, rewarding, insightful, but I'm sure we'll get to those points.
We will. I hope so. And I'm a vegetarian from a very young
Mm,
age. Like as soon as I learned how they get meat, I just I mean, I think if I was starving, it would hit differently, and
mm,
I would do exactly what you did. But it from a young age, like I don't eat it, and I would do everything I could to survive without it. But in that situation, you
mhm.
can't. You have to. It's
Yeah.
so.
And from a caloric standpoint, yeah, from a caloric standpoint, when we think about expeditions, which your group is very, very
Mhm.
knowledgeable about, like how many kilocalories are you packing? You know, like on baseline, just going to work, desk job, like as a male of my size, I'm probably burning close to 2,000 kilocalories a day. If we're out expeditioning in the Arctic Circle, like anticipate way above 4,000, you know? And when we're thinking about, okay, let's survive as long as possible on a plant-based diet, a handful of berries is typically around 100 kilocalories, you know? So that's like a tenth of a tenth of what you should be getting out there. And you're just burning so much calories being cold, being wet, working to build your shelter because there are huge, huge predators out there. We had 900 to, I think, the biggest bear in our location was close to like 1,000 pounds. And these were predatory black bears that were taking down caribou, you know? So as like a 160-pound person, and this bear's like taking down things double my size. It's definitely disturbing to say the least.
That's intimidating. And I
Yeah.
cheat. I definitely cheat on expedition. I have like high calorie protein bars and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like I cheat. I put protein, high calorie protein powder in my coffee. But that's it. I'm aware that it's cheating.
Well, it's
And so
it's
how,
it's a need for sure. Like when I was in the
yeah.
military, I did a lot of Arctic warfare training for our new troops in the Canadian Forces, and we would bare minimum have 6,000 kilocalories a day. And you're basically even with that, you're losing weight and you're hungry all the time
Mhm,
because of how much work you're doing and how cold it is.
mhm.
So I'm not sure if you've had a look at some of the expeditions, the old school expedition books on the meal plans, but they literally put lard and butter like by the teaspoon, and they increase it, like they double it every few days. So you're
Yeah,
eating like handfuls of lards
butter.
at, yeah, exactly.
I
Lots
can
of
eat the
butter.
butter. I can eat the butter.
Yeah.
So how did how, if at all, did your medical background influence like your strategies and your decisions while
Mhm.
you were out there?
I'm glad you asked that because it's kind of like the basis for why I thought I could push quite far and know where that line is. When we look at the history of the show, I would say at least 50% either get pulled for medical reason or pull themselves out for medical reasons. So
Mhm.
50% off the bat. And when you look historically what those reasons are, minus any kind of cardiac issues with someone with a pertinent history of cardiac issues, fine, go. But if it's like swelling in the knee because you have a history of a torn meniscus, or like you have a sprained ankle, got a hook in your hand, you're feeling a little lightheaded because you're probably dehydrated, you're kind of vomiting a lot, having a lot of diarrhea, you're having some abdominal cramps, like a lot of these things you don't necessarily need to leave for. So if you prepare for it, if you practice good hygiene, if you are knowledgeable about specific characteristics of plants so that you could have adequate wound care, adequate hand hygiene, and also one of the things that I brought was they labeled it as a ration, but I specifically brought it as a medical ration. So that was a combination of rice, sugar, and salt. And when we look at the WHO's like guidelines for rehydration salts, there is a mix for that. And the majority of the cases of being tapped or tapping out it's mostly GI related. People puking a bunch, having diarrhea, then feeling lightheaded. So with salts, they just said salts. So I asked them any particular salts. They said no. So I basically made the rehydration salt mix and included some magnesium there. And just with the salts and the sugar, like that was would enable me to stay sick for 14 days straight and like just hit the ground running after those 14 days when that passed through me. And even if I use some of the rice, which is very palatable, very easy to digest, but just the rice water is the WHO's kind of backup if that region has limited resources and cannot use rehydration salts. So it does have some rehydration properties over there, has some simple starches and amino acids that you can drink just from the water. So that was what I did to use it as a preventative measure. And when it was put into practice, what it helped me do is like the cool thing is I tracked all my vitals out there. I got it at the end, so I was able to kind of track how my vitals were doing, and I was able to maintain very good blood pressure with the resources that I brought. Made the food taste awesome, and in addition to that, I wasn't experiencing as many cramps as some of my competitors, so I was able to hunt pretty much all the way up to the end. So to pull like a 50-pound traditional or recurve bow when you lost 60 pounds, like it's definitely something that is beneficial to you.
That was brilliant. One of the things in my pack is a small bottle of just rehydration, like tablets with potassium, magnesium, and all the things. So in a pinch, you just purify your water and take a pill. And I love, and it's a food also. So
yeah.
Brilliant.
One of my favorite meals out there, I had grouse jerky that I had covered in salt and sugar, and that was like the most like even right now tastier than some of the store-bought jerky that I've had. It's so delicious, and it was smoked with alder, so it gives it like a nutty taste as well.
You could open up like an alone kitchen. Like here's how we prepare the survival food. That's brilliant. And then you see so many people just struggling, and I love it that you turned it into something palatable. Not just palatable, but what was your favorite meal? Like of all the things that you caught or made or fish or caribou?
So definitely I did love my grouse jerky. I remember on Thanksgiving, I had a pot of porridge, was rice porridge with reindeer moss, cranberries, and grouse, which was very delicious, seasoned with salt and sugar. Delicious. And it filled like a 2-quart pot. Like that's how much food I had on Thanksgiving when I was out there. And it was such a cool celebration with some organ meats in there, give it some flavoring too. Very delicious. And yeah, it's one of the benefits of making porridge out of rice. It doesn't take a lot. You can have like maybe less than half a handful of it, and it can fill like a 2-quart pot, so it's it makes you feel full, which is nice.
Yes, I love that. And so what motivated you to found Survival Doctors, and what is the mission or the vision for this organization?
Yeah. So everything that I do and everything that I love, whether it's related to survival, to medicine, to being outdoors, that's kind of the one thing that I would want to pass on to my own kids, to my own family. And Survival Doctors initially started as kind of just kind of a keepsake for my kids. So if I had an untimely demise, they would be able to look back and say like, hey, this is what dad was really interested in. This is what he thought was important. And this is what he thought would save my life if I was ever in a pinch. So it started off as that. And we've grown to a nice community of people who are just really enthusiastic about not only their medical independence and their knowledge, but their creativity in that environment. And also how we are using the outdoors to instill confidence, self-reliance in our own families. And it's come to a pretty beautiful thing.
That is beautiful. And I love, and for anyone who doesn't follow him, it's survival.doctors on Instagram. And it is a really good follow, very entertaining and educational follow on Instagram.
Thank you.
And so a lot of people, many people believe that you're the should-be winner of season 9. And so how do you feel about this recognition, and what do you think it reflects on your performance?
Yeah. So I think, like, number one, I love my fans and I love the people who believe that. But at the end of the day, I do believe at the core, Juan Pablo, who was season 9's winner, there was no way out of the top 3 that were on that season that he couldn't be the winner unless he had like a really bad medical emergency. He had a very specific strategy. This is the 3rd time he's done it, you know, because he did 100 days alone by himself. And then he did, I think, over 80 days with his partner with the starvation ration. So he knew what his body was going to do to a very calculated precision. And in addition to that, there were some gear modifications that he did, that he brought, that he really didn't need to do much just to have the days behind him. And he gained about over 60 pounds ahead. So if you are just doing it from a caloric standpoint, that's just 60 days. If you just sat there for 60 days and lost a pound a day, which is typically the average, it like that, he already has 60 days just from the weight that he brought on the thing doing nothing. So if he had any successes or did anything special, that would be in addition to that. I think the only runner up after that was like maybe 40 pounds. I gained around 30 pounds. So I knew that I had about 20 to 30 days extra. So I do think he was justly crowned, but I think the reason why people are so supportive is because I really focused on the journey. I really focused on testing myself because at the end of the day, my whole goal after day 40, which was when I realized it's like, okay, I have a shelter. I've had success with trapping, with hunting. My shelter is warm. What am I doing this for? You know, and that day was so crystal clear to me because I really had trouble saying like, okay, like is it enough to just prove it to myself that I'm able to do this? Like that sounds kind of selfish. That doesn't seem powerful enough. And when I look back at my training, both in the military and through medical school, it was so disheartening to see um, how absent I've been in my family life. You know, my mom was going through a lot of medical things, and she still is. And to be that absent was heartbreaking at that time. And to kind of see her change as a person over that time, over like what seemed like a blink of an eye, was actually like a decade. And it became my purpose to try to inspire her to help change her health, to help see how much I care about her, how much I love her, and how much I hope that her health direction changed. You know, so from day 40 onwards, it was all about maintaining that message of inspiration to do that. And I think a lot of people resonated with that. And the reason why I left was because that message could not have been established if I left via being pulled or left in a stretcher. Because I was pretty close to that point where my muscles were so wasted after losing like 62 pounds that I had gait instability. Like it's the craziest thing because you have your grandfather, your grandmother who have the same thing. They think they're walking fine and they just fall out of beneath themselves. And that was the first time I experienced that. And you know, I was getting very unstable, and I did not want my mom to see that, and I didn't want that message to be um, kind of confuddled because of that condition.
That is, that's just, it's such higher order thinking and rationalization of the situation. I admire it so much. And I think, I'm sure she's very proud of you.
Yeah, she is, and it's super cool to because like as you know, with people who struggle with habit changes and all that, it's an up and down, but I'm so proud of the changes that she's made this year, and since leaving alone. And it was, I think, one of the most beautiful moments that I've had with her. And one of also a little upsetting as well was she told me after watching my season, it was like, I didn't know you cared like that, and
Oh,
that was hard, but also like it was a good hard,
yeah.
because I've become a lot more softer in my approach, and it's been something that's been helpful for our relationship, because I'm sure you know how hard it is to help your family medically and
Yeah.
how tough that is. Yeah.
It is. It is. It's a burden, and it's a burden. I would say most medical practitioners. Uh, it's both an honor, but
Mhm.
it's also a challenge.
For sure.
And
For
this
sure.
is this is a note to everyone out there. If your parents are still alive, call them and tell them that you love them.
Yes. Please, please do. You
Yes.
never know. You never know how much time you have.
No, you don't. And I once scared my parents. It was like before GPSs and stuff, before I could have like the Garmin or whatever
Uh,
and the spot. Uh, I was climbing Aconcagua down in South America, and it
mhm,
was the year that 8 people died in like 98, 99. And
mhm,
I hadn't called, of course. Like I had, I didn't have a sat phone at the time. And across like the news ticker on the bottom, it said something about 8 people dying on Aconcagua. And my parents were like, wait, what? And they spent like a week or 10 days just no word, not knowing, not able
oh
to find
no.
any other information. And I promised myself I would never do that to them again. And so
Mm.
now I carry a locator with me everywhere I go.
Same. I just upgraded my Garmin actually.
Did you? And it's like people are like, well, why do they need to know where you are? And it's like they worry. And if they
Yeah.
can see, oh, she's at the hospital, then they're okay. I
Mhm.
work there. I'm not there, So but it's just be kind to your parents. They worry.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Be kind to your parents, and it definitely gives you insight as someone who's hoping to start his own family soon.
yes, yes. And you're gonna worry, and they're gonna be like, oh, I'm fine. I can ride my bike at night. And you're like, no, you may not.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Oh. And so, how has the experience on the show
Mhm.
contributed? Has it changed your understanding of or your practice of like wilderness or emergency medicine? Has
I
anything that happened out there changed that?
Yeah, I think the biggest change is definitely kind of almost like the spirit or the demeanor from multiple different aspects of me practicing as a professional and where I want my career trajectory to point, but
Mm.
also with I find a lot of understanding for certain patient demographics who are homeless, and I've been homeless myself. I'm not sure if that has been public as
I
well.
saw that. Yep.
Yeah, so I was homeless as well, and and I've had kind of behaviors that I only kind of realized picked up later that was related to like food insecurity issues. But I find a lot more empathy and a lot more connection with a lot of my patients, and we see it so often in the ER that it's a good thing, to be able to connect with a human on that deep level, and to say like I understand, and for them to like realize like yes, this person definitely understands, and to have like a 2-minute conversation and story to share that experience with someone else, it really definitely changes the dynamic, and for the patients who would otherwise be pretty combative, I've seen them
Mhm.
settle down and have that mutual understanding and respect, and I've been very grateful for that because like at the end of the day, one of the beautiful things of being a healthcare provider is connecting with other people on that very deep and vulnerable level. So
Mhm.
it's been a gift for that reason.
And then has it been, it seems everything you do just seems effortless, which I really admire. But is it difficult or is it just seamless to balance your roles? You're a
Mhm.
physician, you're a survival expert, you're now a public figure after your participation on Alone, and now a husband,
Mhm.
congratulations, and hopefully a
Thank you.
father. And how do you balance these roles?
Mhm. So I would say if you are someone who has a passion, and you want to do something else besides your day job, it's going to be a lot of work. It takes a lot of work and effort to be a good husband. It takes a lot of good effort to be a good parent. Um, but at the end of the day, like is worthwhile for you, I probably work like 4 or 5 jobs right now. So it's not easy. I sleep less, and when I'm not sleeping, I'm thinking about like some amazing idea that could benefit my students. Um, but it doesn't feel like work, which is something that I've been very reassured by. You know, your parents always tell you like pick something that you love and it won't feel like work. And honestly, this is the thing for me. So yeah, I find myself like middle of the night waking up and being like, oh, this would be great. So I end up like doing a lit review for a particular topic and then have a field guide ready for my students the next morning. And yeah, they like that's how excited I get about this type of stuff. So yeah, it's not necessarily a balance. It's kind of everything. You become more efficient at doing what you think is important. But it just doesn't feel like work. Like if I were to
Mhm.
compare myself with any other physician who's just working, like I do a lot more, but it doesn't feel like a lot to me.
I feel the same way. I
Yeah.
feel, and sometimes people say like, how do you do it all? It's like, well, I just kind of do it because I'm excited about doing it and I
Yeah.
don't want to not do it. So, but you know, and it, I guess on the outside, sometimes it looks like a lot of responsibility or a lot of
Mhm.
pressure, but it really is just amazing and
Mhm.
enjoyable. And I get to talk to people like you. And
Yeah.
it's really cool.
And you
And
get
so
to
would
grow so
you,
much. For sure.
yes,
Like
yes, you
you
do.
get to grow
Yes.
because the person that you are today can handle it, you know, and the person you are tomorrow and a week from now can handle even more. And that's something that I
Mhm.
definitely uh, kind of want to do, to always increase my capabilities and capacities and understanding and curiosity. Because like, you know, like I get bored. I don't want to
Sometimes that's
just
part
watch
of it too.
TV. Yeah.
And that's a great lesson for people too. Like you can handle it. You can handle it. Take on a little bit more. If you think you can't, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
Stumble. I encourage you to stumble, fall
yeah.
fast, get up quickly,
Mhm,
learn, and take the ego out of it, and you'll find yourself a new person.
mhm, mhm. Would you ever do a TV show like Alone again?
It depends. So if I had never done it before, I 100% no matter what do it again. But now
Mhm,
that I have family, now I have like students who are counting on me,
mhm,
um, it would be very, very conditional and specific. You know, it would have to be for more than just like, hey, like I'm doing it to win $500,000 again, or I'm doing it just because I want to prove something to myself. Like in my mind, I don't need to prove anything additionally. But
mm-mm.
if I was in a position where I needed to do it for my students, if I needed to do it for my family, I'd do it in a heartbeat and win this time.
I I have no doubt. I have no doubt. And so, are there any upcoming projects or goals you have in mind for survival doctors or in your private career that you're really excited about?
Mhm. The most exciting thing that I'm doing with survival doctors right now is I've incorporated a hybrid education program. So we do have still the in-person training, but what I'm teaching my students right now is to survive their first 24 hours, their first 72 hours beyond 2 weeks. So it's kind of a spectrum of education.
Yeah,
And in
yeah.
the sprinkled in between that, we start with first aid things that might be relevant to their survival training. And as they're
Mhm,
moving on, they're basically going through like wilderness first responders, ATLS, and like advancing to the point where like, hey, I would trust this person to treat me if I was in the field. And it's very cool because a lot of the people who are joining this are also curious not only about the acute medicine stuff, but also about the chronic disease and optimizing their health and reducing their medication burden and load, and just understanding that disease process as well. So that makes me really happy as kind of like a provider who does both ER and clinic. So you get to practice and explain and share your excitement for that whole spectrum. And once our students are kind of excited about what they've had and wanted to test it out, we do have in-person expeditions that are just for our students. So we have cold weather survival in Denver, Colorado this year. And then in the summer or spring of 2025, we have horseback riding in Yellowstone with
Ah,
one of my buddies out there who's an awesome hunting guide, and Cade from Alone season 10. So that he's going to be helping me run that. And yeah, basically we're going to have multiple different expeditions for our students, and it's going to be a really fun time.
Very cool. And so you got married
I got
a year
married.
ago, April. Where did you get married?
So our plan was to elope in Sedona, and our family found out, and we had to invite a lot more people. But we got married. It was beautiful. It was very spontaneous, and we're just so happy everything turned out, and the food was amazing. And yeah, we got married, almost immediately moved to Maine. I started a new job here, and we bought our first house, and it's been such a whirlwind. But yeah, a year later, I'm starting my own garden bed. I have some medicinal plants out back, some blueberries, and it's such a fun process.
That you're homesteaded. You're homesteading.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying, like I just tried this Japanese technique called yakisugi or shishugiban, and it's basically charring your wood so it lasts decades instead of years. And yeah, I'm curious. I'm gonna do an A/B test where one's just like untreated hemlock and the other one's the full treatment and see how long it lasts. So it's gonna be fun.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see the outcome of that.
Yeah.
Uh, and so you you were homeless for a while during it was medical school, correct?
Yep, it was medical school. Like as a Canadian coming in the States, you can only get
Uh,
Canadian loans. You can't get any sponsorships, like significant sponsorships or loans in the US. So, like basically I loaned the max I could in Canada, and that got me to pretty much year two of medical school, maybe a little bit into year three. And at that point, my mom was working. Her kind of credentialing was on the line because she co-signed that loan, and I didn't want to add that burden for her. And it was kind of like a perfect storm of badness. Like you're so concentrated as like a third year medical student trying to get good rotations, impress people, and you're just so focused that you lose sight of kind of the important people around you. And I lost sight of my relationship at the time, and it was in Canada, so I was in Windsor commuting to Detroit for my clinicals, and it was a kind of blindsided breakup, and I lost a decent amount of my stuff, and I couldn't afford the place to rent anymore. But my dog got moved back to Montreal, and at that point I was at such a low and just so high stress with like all the exams we had to take and all that. I was just like, I'll live out of my van. And what was
yeah.
supposed to be just a few days turned into a year. I did all my clerkships, living out of my van, waking up at 4 in the morning, working out, showering at Planet Fitness, going to all my interviews across country, just traveling through that van, doing the same process. And it took getting into my first choice program to kind of tell myself, to give myself that permission that I was worthy enough to have a roof over my head again, because I was so down on myself. And yeah, I got into residency, and that's when the moment I got that first paycheck is when I kind of got my apartment.
And so looking back on that journey in medical school, are there any like we've touched on several, but are there any other personal or professional insights that you gained from medical school, from participating in a loan that you'd want to share with people?
Yeah, I think as a medical student, you're just very focused on whatever specialty you want, getting really good scores to make sure you can match in a particular program. I think it's super important to also know the lifestyles behind being a physician in that particular specialty and finding yourself a good mentor. I think that that was the one thing that I wish I had more of, was finding someone who was absolutely in love with that specialty. I think I did have moments where I saw some of that, and it was especially disheartening because like I did residency as COVID hit. There wasn't a whole lot of people who wanted to be the doctor at that point. So it was very hard to see kind of the light, and it does take you taking time to realize what you like as a professional, but also what you need as an individual, what you need as a person, and where your growth trajectory is, and what would bring meaning into your life, and to be very, very adamant that you stick to those values, you stick to those progressions, whether that's going biking or hiking or working out or so forth, because that aspect of your life, like you 100% need it, especially if you're doing a high stress specialty. It just you get lost in the profession otherwise.
I feel that way about emergency medicine. I
Yeah.
feel like almost any other profession would eat me alive.
Hmm.
But emergency medicine, our schedule like offers us some grace
Hmm.
where you're replaced at a certain time,
Hmm.
and you're confident that that person can replace you, and you can go home and do the rest of the things that you love to do, and be a
Be a
good
person.
partner and a good
Yeah.
parent and a good everything. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I've switched from a lot of broad spectrum things as like a hospice, as a clinician, as like
Yeah.
doing like surgical assistant, all these other things, to practicing ER, because you can run a business. You can literally have a second big job or
Mhm.
like a big hobby, and be very comfortable doing that as an ER doctor, and it's something that I'm very grateful for. Especially if you're one of those rural ER doctors who do 24-hour shifts, 5 shifts a month.
Yeah.
Whew, it's beautiful.
Wow. It is. It is. And and it's, yeah, it is. And I enjoy the chaos. I think other specialties would look at us and be like, oh no, thank you. I
Yeah.
can't, I don't want to see, all of that and have all that happening all at once.
Mhm.
But if you can handle all of that happening all at once for 12 or 24 hours,
Yeah.
then you could go on a nice long trip. It's,
I think I think the one thing that almost gives me some nostalgia for is working in the chaos, the interactions between our ER nurses, who are so fantastic, and the docs. It kind of feels like I'm back in the military. It has a similar
Mhm.
vibe to it,
Mhm.
and it's definitely something that I truly enjoy when things go crazy.
Oh, yeah, I do too. I don't want bad things to happen, but when they
Yeah.
do, I want to be there. Like
Yeah.
I want to be. Uh, and so we touched a little bit on this, but could you elaborate on how your military experience shaped some of these approaches to survival in medicine?
Hmm. I think what the military does well is, especially the infantry, you're basically the lowest on the totem pole, almost expendable as a human life, right? And one of the things that happens very often is whatever you get told, as soon as you hit the ground, becomes a change in plans. And what they specifically do, like whether it's basic training or soldier training or infantry training, is they specifically put you in situations and kind of push where your breaking points are, mess around with your expectations so that you expect things not to go well, to the point where it's not a big deal whatsoever, and you're able to pivot so quickly. You take the emotion out of like a heartbreak, an emotion out of a failed business venture or something like that. And I think your ability to grow just is exponential once you get into that habit, because it is a habit. And that's something that's been super helpful, growing as a physician, but also as definitely helped as a survivalist, because you can build your shelter and it gets wrecked by a storm or is in the wrong location, or your resources are not what you anticipated, or the food that you were hoping to get was not even a possibility. So definitely, I think that that mindset in that training was something that was very beneficial. So a lot of
Yeah.
people, to that extent, don't experience it because it almost becomes a game. You're knowing that this is going to go wrong, and you're just waiting for it to go wrong so that you can all laugh about it.
And fluidity, I think fluidity breeds resilience.
Hmm. Yeah.
If you can just roll with the punches, whichever way they come,
Hmm.
you'll find yourself more resilient, and you'll find yourself weathering these storms more easily and more efficiently. And so I looked the list of items you chose to bring with
Hmm.
you into the wilderness for the show. I was brilliant. And
Thank
so
you.
can and like anything in our packs in the wilderness, we want everything to have multiple uses.
Hmm.
But can you discuss why you chose some of these items, and what the
Absolutely.
impetus was behind that?
So we talked about the medical ration, some of the
Mhm.
non-sexy things, but are absolutely necessary, I think, for whatever season you're in. If it's cold, is your sleeping bag. So being very intentional about what the material is made out of, what the fillings made out of, the shape of it, all plays into account on how warm and how appropriate it'll be for a wet, cold environment was our environment. Um, and besides that, like when we think about like normal thermia, you got to be able to make a fire consistently. Like I can do a bow drill, I can do friction fires, but with not knowing the wood species out there and knowing that it's wet the majority of the time, it may take more than a few hours, if not more than a day, to make a fire if you're just doing friction fires out there. And we saw people struggle even with a ferrocenium rod. So definitely having an ability to make that fire easily was on the top of my priority. So I did bring a ferrocenium rod. And even when we think about our priorities of survival, when we think about like water purification, when we think about cutting implements, when we think about warmth, fire can do all of those. Like if you can make a container out of birch bark and drop a hot rock in there, you can boil your water that way. You can cook with the fire. You can cut with the fire. So you didn't necessarily need to bring a knife, an axe, a saw. You could have brought like just one saw or one axe and then process that out really easily with those techniques. And for me, because of my fast metabolism, I was very focused on food procurement. So I had my bow and arrow. I had my snare wires of different gauges and different materials because you can, depending on what you want to use it for and what type of animals you're trying to trap. Sometimes brass is a little bit better than stainless steel, and then the gauges would also be differing between small game and a little medium-sized game as well. Paracord, 550 paracord. I wish our location had the ability to make nets because that's what I would spend the majority of my time doing, just making nets and putting a bunch of nets along that river. But paracord as like an emergency shelter material, you can use roots out there. And if I were to drop one thing, I may have considered dropping paracord because you can use a bunch of roots in the boreal forest. But yeah, it was great because I could set up my sleeping situation in like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, instead of having to source a bunch of natural materials and process it down. And my main cutting device was an axe, and I got that like over a decade now, so it almost felt like a like an old friend. So I was actually feeling some kind of emotional attachment to it, feeling bad that he wouldn't have gone to go on this amazing adventure with me. So it wasn't a fancy axe, it wasn't the best axe out there. It was this old carpenter's axe that I've had for a long time. So I brought that out there, and it did a lot of work for me. Then definitely the bow and arrow did a lot of work as well in the fishing lines.
And if I look in your pack right now,
Mhm.
what what are like three of the most crucial things in there that I'm going to find?
So if you look at my kind of pack right now, if it's like my go bag to go on whatever random hike, when we're thinking about like those spur of the moment adventures, it's less of you need to bring a whole axe and all those things, but a lot of it has to do with your survival priorities in that context. Like signaling is a huge thing. So sure, I'll still bring some fire making materials to make signal fires, but I bring my Garmin with me right now. And in addition to that, I typically almost always bring a Mylar space blanket tarp, not a space blanket, a Mylar tarp, because it can be used as a legitimate shelter. A lot of the ones that you get in your first aid kits will puncture and rip really easily. So I do like those as a setup. They make great sitting pads. Um, my my wife is a city person, so being able to put up a shelter like this that's warm and cozy is ideal. And I typically always carry something to start a fire with and something to cut with. And as you are progressing with your survival skills, those items typically don't need to be incredibly robust. So sometimes my cutting device is I have like an everyday carry wallet that has a sharp edge on it, and I can do a lot with that. Like I can do like a
Mhm.
weekend adventure with that, no problem. I have just like a little spark necklace that I can create fires with if I feel lazy and don't want to do a friction fire.
Love that. one thing we did in the jungle was we started, after working so hard for the first fire, we started drying kindling on the fire
Mm-hmm.
and then packing, everybody had a responsibility to pack a certain amount of dry kindling and keep it dry. And then it
Absolutely.
made every other fire so much easier because you had this kind of already pre-dried kindling, which is just so starting fires with wet wood is so hard.
Yep, yep. You'll need to know how to split it using fulcrum if you don't have a knife. And in addition to that, like one of the things that I typically always carry as well is my trauma pack in like a basic first aid kit.
Mhm.
But in my first aid kit, there's a lot of items that can be used both for medical and survival purposes.
Mhm.
Like duct tape, like is petroleum based, so like that's an amazing fire starter. In addition to gear repair, in addition to some bandages that won't like come off if
Mhm.
that's what you need in that moment. And in addition to that, like I love Vaseline for like gear maintenance if you have like any piston related stuff,
Mhm.
lubrication, and also for wound care too. Like you don't need
Mhm.
topical antibiotics for everything. So
No,
just a little bit of Vaseline in a clean wound plus a bandage will do just fine. And to use it as a fire starter, like that and a little bit of gauze or cotton balls, like you can get a fire in the wettest conditions very, very consistently.
I'm a ardent fan of duct tape.
Yep, yep. Gorilla
All
tape
right.
is what I like.
Oh, gorilla. Okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
any of that type of tape. It is. It doesn't matter how fancy my purse is. I guarantee you it has some of it in there. Just in
Nice.
case, just in case. And so if there are young medics out there who look at your career and say, I want to be that guy. What advice would you have for them? Because I know it's hard. It's very difficult for me to explain how I got here. It was like, well, I
Mhm,
failed here, here, and here, and then
mhm.
I did okay, and that's how I ended up. And so, how what advice would you have?
I mean, it all starts with getting your feet wet, right? It doesn't take a whole
Hmm.
lot. You can go to a WEM conference, you can go to a WMS conference, you can get your FOM, which I did as a medical student into residency. You can get your feet wet, meet some people who are as excited about this. And I think one of the important things is not only being excited about the field of wilderness medicine or extreme medicine or survival medicine, but find your mentors who are doing it professionally, because one of the things that I was having difficulty with while I was looking into wilderness medicine is like, who's making a living out off of this? Who's doing this like full time, you know? And I was very fortunate to have mentors outside of medicine who were in business, who enabled me to kind of have that trajectory for myself. But it's also super important as a young medic or a young medical professional out there who really wants to practice as full time as possible in this field, to say like, okay, how are people doing it? Is it only academics where like I'm a medical director of a program, which is awesome, and some of the most amazing, like amazing instructors and teachers out there, but is that a fit for you? Is that what you want? And yeah, get your feet wet, start some courses, go outdoors, practice your skills, and
Hmm.
meet some people who are doing it to their best capability full time, if that's something that you want.
That's great advice. That is great advice. And as we're kind of winding down here, any other additional words of wisdom for our audience?
Hmm. I know being on an experience like alone may be really far in to conceptualize you doing that. To say like, okay, I'm gonna pick 10 things out of my camping bag right now and spend multiple months outside alone. But one of the things that I would encourage people to do is to do whatever you find is at the limit of what you think you're capable of, and to keep pushing that boundary. You know, as you're building that resilience, as you're getting that experience, as you're getting scared shitless and realizing that, okay, like that wasn't that bad, your ability to be such an asset to your family, to your medical team, and to your expedition buddies is just it just increases so much more when you give your opportunity to do those hard things. So I encourage people to try, to fail, and to explore.
Push your boundaries. And so for people who want to know more about what you are doing, what are some ways they can find you, like website and Instagram?
Mhm. So you can definitely find me on social media. Just need to type in survival doctors with an S. I'm trying to make as many survival doctors as possible. And if you are interested in seeing what I'm up to with our students with the hybrid courses, you can check that out. There's a 30-day free trial going on right now. It is www.survivenow.online/lifeline. And you get to see me teach live, and also you get to see some of our resources that we have for our students.
Oh, that's very cool. And so thank you, Dr. Teimojin Tan, for being my guest today. You are truly an inspiring individual, and your career has just been amazing. And this is an excellent Instagram follow. So I strongly suggest you follow him, as I do, at survival.doctors on Instagram. And I just can't thank you enough for your time. I really appreciate it. And it's just been a pleasure to meet you and to hear more about you, and what an incredible journey.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.
Mhm. And thank you again to everyone listening. I'm Dr. Sarah Spelsberg, and it is my pleasure to share these extreme medicine adventures with you. And if you are listening with us, you too are an extreme medic, and we welcome you to the World Extreme Medicine family. Stay safe out there and always keep pushing your boundaries further. And I hope to see you at our annual conference in Edinburgh.
Thanks for listening to the episode. Please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to. Please also head over to the World Extreme Medicine website, where you can find more engaging content on extreme medicine webinars, and indeed a collection of courses from our global network, including humanitarian, disaster relief, expedition, space, military, tactical, and performance medicine. Thanks again.